a talented digital freelancer, was drowning in anxiety, constantly checking his empty inbox. He worked tirelessly on his job, pitching, chasing, and desperately pursuing clients. But his income never seemed to match his effort, and he certainly wasn't happy. He felt trapped, believing the key to becoming wealthy was just more pursuit, more grinding. He didn't realize that his income could not far exceed his personal development. In the new economy, as in the old, true success isn't pursued. It is attracted. Today, let's explore the deep and life-changing wisdom of Jim Rohn, as I recall the moments he shared these profound truths with me. I remember Jim Rohn always made it a point to remind us, if you want to be wealthy and happy the rest of your life, just learn this lesson well. Learn to work harder on yourself than you do on your job. For this freelancer, his job was the chase. It was the frantic sending of cold emails, the endless scrolling through job boards, the desperate networking in crowded digital forums. The air in his home office felt stale, heavy with the scent of burnt coffee and the low, agonizing hum of his laptop fan. The blinking cursor on his screen seemed to mock him, a rhythmic reminder of his lack of progress. His job was exhausting him, but his self, his skills, his mindset, his value proposition remained undeveloped. He was pursuing wealth, and in doing so, he was repelling the very happiness he craved. Life has strange ways, my friends. Jim often pointed out that income rarely exceeds personal development. He'd say, sometimes income takes a lucky jump, but sure enough, unless you grow out where it is, it'll usually come back where you are. This freelancer experienced exactly that. One morning, a viral post he'd made months ago was discovered by a major brand. Suddenly, a contract landed in his inbox. A lucky jump. It was a $50,000 project, more than he'd made in the previous 6 months. The relief was intoxicating, but it was short-lived. The client's expectations were immense. They didn't just want his technical skill, they wanted his strategy, his vision, his leadership. He was terrified. He hadn't developed those parts of himself. He was frantically trying to keep the money, but he wasn't yet the person who deserved that level of responsibility. As Jim warned, if somebody hands you $1 million, best you become a millionaire quickly, so you get to keep the money. This freelancer had been handed a golden opportunity, but his internal anxiety and apprehension were screaming that he was an imposter and that this luck would soon disappear, returning him right back where he started. He was exhausted, on the verge of burnout, and confessed to a mentor, "I just don't have enough high-paying clients." His mentor, echoing the wisdom of Rohn's own teacher, Mr. Schoaf, replied, "That is not your problem." The freelancer was confused. "What do you mean? My bank account is the problem." The mentor shook his head. "No, the problem is a lack of an idea on how to create the value that attracts high-paying clients. It isn't lack of clients, it's lack of ideas." This was the first major turning point. His whole life, he thought the problem was external, the market, the algorithm, the competition. He now realized the problem was internal. He needed new ideas. And to change your life, you need ideas. There isn't anything an idea can't change. So he had to begin the first step. Find out how things really work. If you wish to be successful, you must study success. The freelancer realized his study had been all wrong. He was reading endless articles on top 10 hacks to get clients now and how to trick the LinkedIn algorithm. He was reading the digital equivalent of junk food. He made a change. He stopped reading hacks and started studying value. He dove into books on business strategy, behavioral psychology, and expert communication. He read how industry legends built their careers not on tricks, but on timeless principles of trust and authority. He became self-educated, As Rohn said, standard education will get you standard results, but if you want to go beyond that, you must become self-educated. He didn't read half the night. He started with just 30 minutes a day, reading something challenging, something instructional. He wasn't just a follower of trends anymore. He was becoming a student of his craft. The second way to find out is to listen. Jim Rohn used to joke, "Poor people ought to take rich people out to dinner and listen." The freelancer realized he was the poor person in this scenario, not just in money, but in mindset. He was constantly asking for free advice in forums, hoping for a handout. He decided to act differently. He identified the most respected professional in his niche, someone who clearly attracted clients, and he paid for a 1-hour high-ticket strategy session. It cost him nearly $1,000, money he felt he couldn't spare. His peers in those free forums mocked him. $1,000 for a Zoom call? You got scammed, one wrote. Another chimed in, "Look at Mr. Big Shot, spending money he doesn't have. He'll be broke in a week." But in that 1 hour, the mentor listened. And as the freelancer explained his chasing strategy, the mentor simply said, "You're demonstrating your desperation, not your value. Stop chasing. Show them the results you've already created. Make that your marketing." That single idea, born from listening to someone who was already successful, was worth 10 times the price. The third way to find out is to observe. Success leaves clues. The freelancer stopped observing his direct competitors, the other desperate freelancers. Instead, he started observing the masters. He looked at how they presented themselves. It wasn't just their slick websites, it was their confidence, it was the language they used. They didn't say, "I can do this for you." They said, "Here is how we solve this problem for others." He watched how they handled Q&A sessions, how they responded to comments, how they built case studies. Jim would say, "If a guy is making $10,000 a month, I'd watch how he walks." This freelancer watched how the $50,000 a month consultants wrote. He didn't copy their words, he copied their authority. He was learning to see with insight, not just sight. He was paying attention. He was there. He had found out how things work. Now came the hard part. Step number 2, go to work. Not the old job of chasing, but the new work on himself. This is where true excitement lies, in your ability to make yourself do the necessary things. He set a new discipline. It was a small one, just as Jim advised. You can't handle the big challenges in life unless you take on the little ones. His little discipline. For 1 hour every morning before checking email, before looking at social media, he would work on one perfect case study. He would dissect his lucky $50,000 project, detailing the problem, his process, and the measurable result. The sensory detail of this new work was different. The air in his office no longer felt heavy with anxiety, but quiet with focus. The only sound was the deliberate, confident click of his keyboard, punctuated by the scratching of his pen in a journal as he refined his ideas. This was the muscle he was building. He disciplined himself not just for the result, but for the practice. This is where self-motivation becomes key. There were days he didn't want to do it. The modern distractions, the notifications, the TDAH-like pull of the infinite scroll, the FOMO, were screaming at him. "Just check your email," his anxious mind would plead. "What if a client is waiting?" But he had to motivate himself. "What if they don't show up?" Jim would ask. "You got to have a better plan for your life." The freelancer reminded himself that his learning must lead to action. Learning without action makes you a fool. Learning that leads to action makes you wealthy. He finished the case study. It was brilliant. It told a story. It demonstrated undeniable value. He posted it on his dormant website and his LinkedIn profile. And then he went back to work on his next case study. He was no longer working on his job, he was working on himself. Now, the third step. A little caution. Don't try to beat the system. In the digital world, this temptation is everywhere. He had his new, powerful case study. The gurus online told him to blast it to 10,000 people using an automated email service. They told him to use AI to spin the article into 50 cheap answers to post everywhere. They told him to buy ads, to cut corners, to slice it and shade it. He was tempted. It seemed faster, but he remembered the lesson. Don't fall for that. You'll wind up with a cheap life. He had to do it the right way, even if it seemed to take longer. He didn't blast it. He didn't spam. He simply posted it. He let his value sit there, a beacon of his development. He chose integrity over automation. Weeks passed. The routine returned. The discipline held. He focused on his self until the unthinkable happened. An email appeared in his inbox, but it wasn't a reply to a cold pitch. It was a new message. The subject line read, "Inquiry from Fortune 500 company." His heart pounded. He opened it. A vice president had seen his case study, shared by someone in her network. She wrote, "This is exactly the kind of thinking we've been looking for. Are you available for a call?" And then, like a bolt splitting the sky, the truth hit the freelancer. The success wasn't in the email, it was in the attraction. The pain of the past wasn't punishment, it was school. The criticism from his peers wasn't failure, it was noise. He hadn't pursued this client, they had found him. He had worked so hard on himself that he had become the person they were looking for. He was attracting success because he had finally become successful. That was the change. That was the day he stopped being a freelancer and became a consultant. He never sent a cold email again. He didn't have to. His work, his ideas, his self became a magnet. He began to teach this principle to other struggling entrepreneurs, sharing the legacy of that simple phrase. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. He taught them that the anxiety and apprehension they felt was just a symptom of chasing, not a condition of business. He taught them to stop studying the algorithm and start studying each other, the universal pains, the dreams, the hopes. He taught them that the digital age doesn't change the human heart. As my friend Jim Rohn used to point out, you don't have to be the same again after today, only by choice. What are you going to do starting tomorrow that will make a difference? Will you keep chasing? Will you keep working only on your job, hoping for a lucky break? Or will you start the small disciplines? Will you start working harder on yourself? Because the next 5 years of your digital career are going to be like the last 5, unless you, major key, tomorrow, change it all. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of Jim Rohn's profound wisdom. Apply these insights to your own path. If this resonated with you, subscribe for more transformative content, like if this inspired you, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let them guide your growth.